Update. Am I the a-hole for no longer bringing dinner for my wife after she claimed I never cook? Original post. I work at a nice restaurant as a cook, and every day when I get off from work, I always cook dinner for my wife and our 2 kids, 8 male and 6 female, at a restaurant before coming home. The only time I don't cook for them are on weekends when I'm off, and that's when my wife does the cooking. We usually trade off who makes breakfast and lunch for the kids every other day, but for the week I'm always the one bringing home dinner. Weekends, we sometimes get together with friends and they come over to the house. My wife usually cooks, and I help set the table/clean afterwards. One of her friends, Stacy, asked how come I never do any of the cooking, and it is always on my wife all the time making meals for the kids, especially when I'm a cook myself. Instead of correcting her, my wife sort of laughed and went along with it, making jokes about, you know how it is. And Stacy laughed because her ex-husband was the same way, and then sort of ripped on me in a joking way, how I better buck up before I became an ex too. My wife just said, well, let's see if he actually listens and starts cooking for once. Joking about all the time is spent in the kitchen at work but won't do the same at home. It really ticked me off. I'm not the husband that just doesn't do anything after I'm home from work. I cook food for her and the kids at work. And on top of that, I make separate dishes for each of them, what she wants and what the kids want. All that after standing on my feet all day. We talked about it once they left, because I don't appreciate being told I'm not doing something she knows for a fact I do. She didn't want to apologize for it because it was all just to be a funny joke. Even after telling her about how it hurt my feelings being put down like that, my wife said she felt like she has to go along with the joke so there wouldn't be any awkward vibes, whatever that means. But I said, fine. If she can't apologize for something that was mean just so she could laugh along with her friends, then I won't keep doing something she already claims I don't do. And for the past week, I've only brought home dinner for our kids, and she's had to make her own food. She's mad that I'm refusing to feed her over what happened, instead of letting it go. But I can't help but feel mad about being made fun of like that, when I'm busting my butt to provide for my family, and still making sure they have food on the table every evening. She just thinks I'm an a-hole for how I'm reacting, when she's already tired at the end of the day, but still having to make food for herself. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments before reading the update. Not the a-hole. Your wife missed a great opportunity to boast on you, all for acceptance by others who have nothing invested in your relationship. Not even to boast though would have felt nice, but at least say, hey, you're wrong, not just go along with it. As a stay-at-home mom who has a significant other who actually does things for himself and around the house, I've basically had this conversation before. All she had to say is, actually, I don't have that problem. He's a responsible adult and pulls his share. I don't get why she had to lie to keep it from being awkward. I'm sure it was awkward already. Not the a-hole. Your spouse is supposed to be your partner in everything in life. The person who always has your back like you always have theirs. She threw you directly under the bus for the sake of not creating waves with her friend. Then when you told her you didn't find her comments at all funny and quite hurtful that she let someone else believe you're a deadbeat, she blew you off. So, she can make her own dinner until she sincerely apologizes and acknowledges that your contribution to the family of cooking dinner during the week is important. I feel like it was an excuse to worry about making waves. I don't understand why actually cooks during the week would create an awkward moment. If anything, it's the opposite. If I was the friend complaining about my horrible ex-husband who never helped, and my friend lied to me about how she can relate because her husband doesn't contribute, I would be pretty angry to find out she actually has an amazing husband who always helps her out. Like, I would be a bit hurt that she decided to lie and act like she's dealing with the same crap I am, when in reality, her husband is doing a lot of work to help her out. Now for the update. At first, wasn't going to post an update, but since things have gotten better, why not? I didn't show my wife this post like some suggested until a few days later, but before that, she wanted to talk before bed. And she apologized for how she's been behaving with me, when she made those jokes and let her friends say things about me, then how she was acting afterwards. In reality, she knew she did wrong, but when I called her out, it made her defensive, and she realizes how she was acting like a child after knowing how much I do for our family. That's when I showed her the post and opened up about something that was mentioned by me in my comments. How it really hit a nerve for me, making it seem like I'm a lousy father/husband when my dad was exactly that as he abandoned me and my mom. She knows how important it is for me to be as involved as possible when our kids were born because I never wanted to be like him. So her making it seem like that's how I am brought up some feelings. Telling her this really made her feel like she messed up big time. She wouldn't stop apologizing. She promised she'd never put me down that way. And honestly, I think she's shown that she meant her apology. For a week, she wanted to be the one making dinner for everyone, so I'd have some time to relax after work. It was nice, but also missed making meals for my family. Cooking for my kids is my own way of expressing my love for them, so we're back to that as well. I feel like my wife has more than shown how sorry she is, and appreciates what I also do for this family. Last time we had lunch with her friend a few days ago on my day off, she even brought it up. As mad as I was when it happened, it's nice to see she's made an effort to make amends. The support I got from here was very sweet. I appreciate feeling heard when it felt like my wife wasn't at a time. I'm really glad things work out for you regarding this. Cooking is definitely my way of showing love to those I care about as well. Keep being a great father, and continue what you do regarding your cooking. Thank you. My family always loved my cooking, so knowing they enjoy something I made on top of keeping them fed is always a nice reward for me. Glad to see another wonderful example of communication and empathy solving the base issue. It's great that your wife was able to understand the underlying reasons behind why her comments were so hurtful to you, since that will help her consider her words before responding in future instances. I think she did a very normal human thing, which is to try to sympathize with the person who's hurting around you by agreeing with her general complaints. It's understandable because you don't want to sound like you're gloating at a person in that situation, but it can also cast a negative shadow on the sad person's recovery. If your wife has trouble with that kind of thing, you could recommend to her that she paint her comments about you as proof that good men do exist out there, if her friends take the time to look for them. It makes you feel good, it makes your wife feel good, and it gives a sad friend hope for a future relationship, as compared to despairing that no man/woman will ever truly love me. I think this is a communication issue. The issue was resolved because the person in the wrong admitted they were wrong and genuinely apologized and made it up to the person they wronged. Oftentimes, things don't get resolved no matter how the two parties communicate, because the one in the wrong doesn't want to admit they were wrong. Did she set the record straight with Stacy? Yes, she did. Good, because apologies behind closed doors are okay. But if her friends continue to make fun of you because she didn't set them straight, that's tough. Next story. Am I the a-hole for calling my son inconsiderate? I, 46 female, have twins, 19 males, and another son, 16 male. My youngest son loves to cook and bake. To him, it's a source of relaxation. Alfredo, burgers, pizza, you name it. Heck, even a whole cake he can make it. Everyone who's met him knows he's a fantastic cook. However, he prefers to only cook for himself and gets really annoyed when my twins walk in on him cooking and ask him to make them food as well. He'll end up doing it, but he does it very begrudgingly and usually gives them a much smaller portion than his own serving, which my twins don't like. They both have jobs, and will sometimes use their job money to buy us all a little fast food, so they find it really upsetting how their younger brother never returns the favor by primarily cooking for himself. The other day, neither of my twins had class and weren't really in the mood for the food that we had in the house. My son came back from school and decided to make himself some banana pudding. When my twins asked for some as well, he told them they could just make it themselves, and that the ingredients were all still there. My son put the banana pudding in the fridge and went to go take a shower while it was chilling. When he came back down, he saw that my twins had eaten it all, and this really upset him. When he told me about the situation, I confronted the twins, to which they said it was really rude for him to only make something for himself knowing that they were hungry as well. And like he said, he could always make some more. So I told my son that while they shouldn't have eaten his food, they were right, and he was very inconsiderate. My son replied that it's not fair how he gets back from school and is expected to make food for his older siblings, that they can just get a cookbook and learn how to make things for themselves. I told my son that if he's not going to cook for everybody, then he can't cook anymore. He's been pretty moody ever since. Obviously, his brothers shouldn't have eaten his food, but it takes no effort to just make a larger portion of the food he's cooking so that everybody can have it. My husband thinks I'm in the right, but I'm really not happy with how things are right now between my children. So, am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. I told my son that if he's not going to cook for everybody, then he can't cook anymore. You're the a-hole. You are not entitled to have your 16-year-old cook for the whole family every time he wants to cook. If this is a hobby that he enjoys, good for him. You and your other children are not an automatic beneficiary. And your twins eat all of his pudding? Major a-hole move. Did you make them make another batch to replace the one they ate? Or did you just let it slide and go on to punish 16-year-old? Give your head a shake. If you want him to cook for you, then maybe you should assign a night of the week that each of your kids be responsible to feed a family, whether it be cooking or bringing home food. Then it's fair. Yeah, or you could make them pay money if he cooks for them. I mean, if it was done in a fair and structured way like once a week, having him cook for everyone wouldn't be an unreasonable chore, given that they'll sometimes buy food and is using a provided kitchen and ingredients. But making it spontaneous and all-consuming, like make them something every time, it looks like she's just playing favorites. You're the a-hole. Why should your twins endlessly benefit from your 16-year-old's work? I hope he gets himself into a professional kitchen and thrives. He's not their servant. Are they doing his laundry? His other chores? Do they clean up the kitchen afterwards? That would be more equitable. What are they doing in return? Do you seriously think them buying something fast food is the same as all the work involved in making a meal? If he finds cooking and baking relaxing, he shouldn't do it professionally unless he really, really wants to. That's a good way to ruin a hobby. Last story. Am I the a-hole for telling my parents I don't want kids because I'm scared they will turn out like my brother? My older brother is unemployed, had almost always been unemployed, and has no intention to ever work. His life plan is to live off of our mother until she dies. Then our father, if he happens to live longer, then live off his inheritance. Or maybe he will try to mooch off of another relative. I don't know. Our parents have tried to get him to work. They did everything in their power to arrange him job positions where he didn't even have to interview. But no, he always comes up with an excuse to why that job is not good enough for him. He is my brother, so I love him of course, but at the same time, I'm ashamed of him and with how his actions hurt our parents. I turned 30 this week, and we celebrated it with my family yesterday. My mom said she was 30 when she had me, and asked me when my husband and I will have kids. I told her I'm not sure if I'm up to the job. Raising children seems too difficult to me. She asked what I meant, and I told her that I don't think I would be able to properly parent a child, correct their behaviors, and deal with them possibly not living up to my expectations, which is not fair to the child either. She pressed further and my father joined in, acting like they don't understand what I mean, up until I told them that I'm afraid my child would turn out like my brother, for example, and I don't think I could deal with that. They got quiet for a second, and I saw that they finally understood what I meant. The problem was that, even though my brother was having a different conversation with one of our cousins, he heard what I said, looked at me, said nice, and walked out. Our parents said that I shouldn't have said what I said, even though they admit they pressured me to explain and understand my concerns, because it's already really hard to get my brother to come to family events, and now I made it even worse, and they want me to apologize to him. I didn't mean for him to hear that, and I feel bad. But seriously, he's a 34-year-old man refusing to get a job. I think it's time we stop cuddling him. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Your brother is a non-functional mooch, unless there is something else going on. Your parents pressed the issue. By the way, they're enablers. It's ridiculous. My brother-in-law was also an unemployed mooch living with mommy from age 35 to 50. I told my husband that the brother-in-law is perfectly capable. Brother-in-law then met a gal who kicked his butt into shape, and he got a job and got married. The enabling is a real problem. Opie's parents did fail her brother, but the brother is at fault as well. It's a phenomenon called failure to launch, and Opie's parents are definitely enabling it by not pushing him out of the nest, so to speak. Not the a-hole. Pure and simple. Your life, your choice. Raising kids is a lot of work. I have 4, trust me. Worst thing for a child is having a parent that's not ready to commit the parent's life to raising a child. Now, if you want a child but simply are afraid of XYZ, let me comfort you. Every child is different. Your parents are enabling your brother, but that doesn't have to be you and your child. It's quite possible you won't have the same challenges with your child your parents have with your brother. Make no mistakes. There will be challenges. 99% chance they'll have their own unique twist and making your life interesting however. I can concur. All 3 of the kids my parents raised turned out to be screwed up in completely different ways that are combated with completely different strategies. 2 out of 3 of us, despite facing a ton of challenges and having a lot wrong with us well into adulthood, have also found our own versions of success. One of us is a pseudo-Nazi who wriggled out of an arson charge. But part of parenting is accepting that your kid might turn out to be a bad person for reasons beyond your control. Not the a-hole. Is it the US? If so, there's a thing called eviction. Unless he's able to pay for his own food and place to live, he's not really doing anything useful. And I totally agree. Raising kids is a difficult thing to do. Same reason I don't have kids. I just don't want to take that burden. My brother made it clear in the past that if they kicked him out, he would just go to our maternal grandparents who would take care of him. Our parents didn't want to burden the grandparents, so they never attempted to stop providing for him. Then, our grandparents both died last year within a few months from each other. But now my parents believe he couldn't take care of himself and would just become homeless if they kicked him out. My dad especially said he couldn't live with that. He couldn't make his son homeless. I tried suggesting they tell him that they will cut him out of their will if he doesn't get a job. But my dad says that wouldn't work, because my brother would call his bluff. Update. Am I 26 female overreacting about how my parents, 50s male/female, treated my aunt, 50s female? Original post. Growing up, I was told I had a maternal aunt, but that she was too selfish to have time for her family, and that was why I never met her. My parents would badmouth her every opportunity they got, but I never really got an answer about what happened. I was at a family function 2 years ago on my own while my parents were out of the country. My parents will not attend events my aunt will be at, and being that she's child-free, my family was always given preference because of me. When I got to meet her, I was really struck by her. I knew I looked like her, but our personalities are very similar. We immediately got along, and we exchanged numbers. I didn't tell my parents I was talking to her because it wasn't their business and I'm an adult. As we got closer, I found out she was married before her current husband and he passed away after a hard fight with cancer. She's been helping me with career path after graduate school, has great connections that have been absolutely amazing. My aunt wouldn't tell me what happened. She told me that it was between her and my parents, and that it didn't need to involve me. One night I went over to dinner, and we were talking about my education. When I said my dad's parents paid for my college, she seemed surprised, but said nothing. Dinner wasn't awkward and nothing seemed to be wrong. My aunt said she was tired after dinner and asked her husband to drive me home. I had a few glasses of wine. On the car ride, he told me that I was an adult and deserved to know the truth about what happened. And this is a first-hand account because he was there. He was my aunt's late husband's best friend and best man. And before anyone comments, they both say her late husband told them that it would happen after he passed and they had his blessing. My parents disowned my aunt because she had a child-free wedding and wouldn't make an exception for me, but literally offered to pay for an on-site childcare. But because I couldn't be there, they refused and belittled my aunt. They cut her off entirely, and I can honestly see them being this petty. They had a hard time having me. This is where it gets even worse. My maternal grandparents have been gone 10 years. They both died in an accident. When her husband was dying of cancer, my aunt reached out to my mom, only for my mom to ask her, "Well, he was the only family you needed at your wedding, wasn't he?" and hung up on her. The biggest thing? She sent my parents the money to pay for my college and grad school, and they didn't tell me. When he dropped me off, I immediately called them and they admitted that it was true, but defended their position, saying that I should have been invited. I told them both they were horrible people to leave her alone for so long, and never to contact me again. They have been blowing up my phone and showing up uninvited to my house. They are now harassing my aunt, who is almost inconsolable. I texted them to tell them it wasn't endearing their position to me, but they didn't stop until she blocked them both. I don't know what else to do now. Did I overreact? My aunt is crushed. Now for the top advice before reading the update. Wow, your parents are a piece of work. They disowned her over a petty thing like a child-free wedding, and yet accept her money for your college education? They have a lot of apologizing to do. You did not overreact. If you haven't already, contact your aunt to tell her she has nothing to be sorry about, and that you want to keep your relationship with her and properly thank her for your education. For your parents, tell them very clearly, until I get a full apology from you lying about my education, we won't be speaking anytime soon. Sorry your parents robbed you of a loving aunt while you were growing up. Sorry you have such petty, toxic parents. Your parents define hypocrisy by taking your aunt's money while trash-talking your aunt. They are petty and hold a grudge. But that is who I would be, so I don't fault them personally. I may not disown, but I'd definitely distance. Although taking her money not speaking was a prick move. Only thing they did I disagree with is that they should have told you. I'd have taken it, but definitely told you where it came from. I'm genuinely surprised that you will be angry over your sister offering to cover babysitting for one day while you attend her wedding. And I do understand that they were more attached to the baby since they had problem having children and wanted to have her with them 24/7. May I ask, is this something you will actually be distancing yourself from your own sister over? I'm really curious. And for the update. My original post got 0 attention, but I'm updating anyway because I'm so happy due to some news I received today. It didn't get any better, unfortunately. I got all contact with my parents after they showed up to my place, demanding that I speak to them, and they refused to apologize for what they did. They said she turned her back on family, and I asked them how. By not wanting a toddler that would be bored out of her mind at a wedding ceremony? They looked like I slapped them. And I kept repeating that I've had been bored as heck. I've seen some videos and it was a typical wedding, as lovely as it was. And it was literally only a few hours. They couldn't bear to part with me for a few hours? I said the only people I saw abandoning family here were them, especially when she called them as her husband was dying of terminal cancer, and they shunned her at her lowest. I said even after that she still sent money for my college, and they couldn't even be decent people and be honest about that either. I told them I wanted nothing to do with them, and that they could consider themselves the childless couple, while she gained what would be the equivalent of an adult daughter, and then slammed the door in their faces. I eventually had to threaten them with the police when they wouldn't leave. I spent Thanksgiving with my aunt and her friends, who she has said are her family. They've been friends since high school and are just as warm as my aunt is. Today she called me. My aunt has owned her own small business for the past 15 years, and it is doing well. She told me that a person who is in the position in my field is retiring next year, and she would like me to consider the position. She said it is merits based on my work. She stressed there is no expectations, but if I come aboard, it would be unfair of her not to say that she'd want me to eventually take over the company, instead of selling it like she planned in the future. I accepted, and will be starting my new position in the new year so I can learn the accounts from the person in the position. Your head music be spinning, and you got a year older in this time, so I think your stance on your parents' behavior is pretty much bang on. They have shunned their relative, cut her off and been petty, and then lied to you about it. The question I have is, what do you want for your relationship with them in the future? Just a month. My birthday was a week after my first post. I don't want a relationship with them in the future at this point. I can't even fathom it right now. I can't imagine doing what they did to her, while my mom continues to claim that she loved her sister. She says she loves me, but what happens if I do something she doesn't like? I can understand why you'd be wary of having contact with them. But you have just done something they don't like, and the consequences have not been great for you so far. How was your relationship with them before all this came out? What does your aunt say about it all? Does she think you should have a relationship with them? Our relationship was mostly good, but looking back, it was only good when I obeyed. Anytime I didn't, it was a nuclear meltdown situation that only reinforced my obedience. One time, my dad lost his mind because I didn't want to wear a winter jacket because it was too warm, and he ended up not speaking to me for 3 days. My aunt tells me that she supports me, but she doesn't want me to make any rash decisions as they are still my parents and love me deeply. She doesn't push one way or the other. She just listens. You are not overreacting. My dad does the same thing. I'm realizing my parents are honestly toxic people. If you don't fit their ideals, they will bully and mock you. I realized at Thanksgiving that my aunt was surrounded by warm, loving people, and my parents were mostly alone with no friends when I was growing up. I wanted to be surrounded by warm, loving people. Next story. My brother is in jail because of me. I feel guilty and confused. My parents can't stop blaming me and I fear they might be right. Last year was exhausting and terrible. It's getting much worse. I'm just too tired and stressed, too disgusted and guilty and happy all at once. Last year, I found out my brother was in possession of adult materials involving children. When my 28 female husband 31 male was installing a WFH software in my brother's computer, this was done behind my back. He found a material and told me. My brother 37 male is the personification of the term loser. An awful piece of garbage who has no purpose in life, and not a shred of love for anyone. At 37, he still lives at home with my pathetic parents who enable him. This sad excuse of a man mistreated and traumatized me repeatedly and ruined my childhood. But I didn't think twice about drawing the line when kids have been victimized for his pleasure. I was absolutely furious with my husband for contacting him, but he promised he'd handle it himself. My husband and I went to the police, who then contacted the FBI to conduct a wider investigation. They raided my family's home and caught my brother. They confiscated his devices and found the evidence they needed. Everything was set for conviction. Then 4 months ago, he, along with other accomplices, was sentenced to 5 years in jail. The case was severe. Others received 10-year sentences. I was euphoric. I celebrated with my husband and was just ready to leave it behind at that. But then my parents got back to harassing and shaming me. Apparently his health in jail is bad, so they're blaming me for it. They are telling me I'm the bad person here as opposed to their criminal pedo son. My manipulative mom has a knack for faking tears, such that I ended up feeling sad and guilty because of her. They're even going after my husband and accusing him of staging it. My husband filed a restraining order, so we're reasonably safe. We're starting therapy too because I'm just wrecked from the inside. I overthink it sometimes. If he dies in jail, it'll be my fault, right? He was asking my husband for help because allegedly he was ready to start a new life. But I just can't think of his horrible crime without crying and vomiting. Did I do the right thing? Now for the top comments. He's in jail for his own actions. You just followed the law and reported him. If anything happens, it's his own fault. I agree, you did the right thing. Don't let them guilt trip you into thinking otherwise. Thanks to you, it can't hurt anyone else. If anything, you should be proud. I have faith that you'll pull through. It takes a lot of courage to call out your family even if he is a criminal. I wish you and your husband all the best. My brother is in jail because he was in possession of adult materials involving children. Fix your title. He is not in jail because of you. You did the right thing. You shouldn't fear that your parents are right. They are wrong, and you should be proud. Not only did you put a criminal in jail, now you can cut your parents out of your life too. Clearly, they're not worth having in your life if they enable this man and blame you for putting him away. Why are you worried he will die in jail? Frankly, it's only 5 years, and he needs it. I may be a stranger, but I'm proud of you. I support your choice to go to therapy to help you get through all your feelings, and hopefully it will help you accept that what you've done is definitely the right thing. Thank you for your support. I really needed that. If he dies in jail, it will be because he's a freaking criminal, and not because you turned him in. You did the right thing. He did not. Hi, he won't die there. They have doctors and medical professionals there too. But in the wider scheme of things, think about this. What will bring you long-term peace? If I was in your situation, I wouldn't ever talk to my parents again. But starting therapy is a great step, and I really think you will feel supported. Yes, you did the right thing. What your brother chose was vile and disgusting. And in your place, I also couldn't have lived with myself if I didn't do anything to protect kids. Now for the last story. My brother is burning down all his bridges, and his ego won't let him see how bad it's getting. So my female 24, brother male 41 is the most successful member of my family, financially at least. He has a house, a job that pays tons, and 3 beautiful kids. But he's slowly destroying every part of his life he can't control. My brother is very high-strung and tends to try and control everything and everyone in a very clinical way. He asked me for a life plan at 13 and told me to never pursue the arts because I wouldn't make enough money at 9. If he doesn't get his way or says something out of place, he will yell and get very aggressive. He has always been like this since I can remember her. He also holds a grudge against our mom seemingly for being the victim of mistreatment by our father, who was his idol. I didn't talk to him for 2 years because of this. Naturally, me and my mother's relationship with him is strained, but his behavior and obsession with work to the exclusion of all else, no hobbies other than the gym, broke down his marriage. She didn't have the killer instinct he needed in a partner. After about a year living maybe an hour away from her and his kids, he moved back closer. He moved across the road from her. It still feels like he's trying to control her and is getting increasingly aggressive with our mother when she tries to reach out to help him. He got contact with her for 2 weeks when she told him we wouldn't come for Christmas, but we could 2 days later. I'm watching him try to control complex human beings like robots and freaking out when he can't. I see this man who claims to be an intellectual fail to understand simple emotional maturity because he acts like any slight to his ego is a war crime. Now his ex is considering moving halfway across the country with the kids, and I don't blame her. I feel like he's gonna work himself to death and burn all his relationships down trying to control everyone to his interests. Any perspective on this? You cannot change him. He is a grown man and he'll suffer the consequences of his actions. You can decide that you want him out of your life and cut him off. There's this little phrase in my language that I think applies well here that roughly translates to let him run into the knife, slash against the wall by himself. He's an adult. He's not open to any communication. Actually, he becomes quite hostile. He's hating on an abused victim, which is not very surprising regarding his technically an abuser himself. And now he even shows signs of potential stalking. What Opie can do? Distance herself. Live her own life. Don't let him drag you down, girl. You might have been related, but he's no family you can save. Furthermore, Opie's mother should do the same, even if it might hurt knowing it's technically her child. And the ex should prep for calling the police on him, though I think she already does with the whole moving aspect. Any perspective on this? Yes, unless your brother happens to get a visit from the ghost of Christmas past during the night. Don't hold your breath waiting for him to suddenly realize what a miserable a-hole he is. This. He seems like he has main character syndrome and that's not usually something fixable. Straight up, that's just embedded into their personality. I would be very wary of this man. He's an abuser. Control is what mistreatment is all about. He's not getting the control he wants, so he's escalating. The fact he can't see this means he has the potential to take his awful nature into deadly territory. Unless he actually gets professional help dealing with his desire for control, you should seriously not ever be around him. You, your mom, and his ex. I would assume this has to do with how your father was, since you say he idolized him. This is a scary one as you described him, Opie. Really take this seriously. This is going to get worse. Agreed. I'd actually leave him alone, and reach out to his ex to find out what you can do to help her and the kids get away from him. I can't even imagine the damage he is doing to his children, let alone his ex.